I'm so glad that you made the opportunity to come today. I know this will be a really important part of your day. And hopefully it'll change your life, maybe the way you look at things different after today. And I'm so excited to have Jay come again. He was at the main campus last week, and everybody was so excited, and it was such, received so well. And so we wanted to bring him back, and so I appreciate him coming and making the time for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. So I just enjoy doing these things. A little bit about myself. I work in Silicon Valley, 13 years, worked at IBM for 12 of the 13 years, worked at a startup company, and after a year, I decided, that was not fun. I was not enjoying myself. I was not happy. Yeah? On and off? Okay. So we tried a few different combinations. I don't even know where it is right now, so if I move it, I don't want to mess it up. Marco, the expert, hung it at the optimal place. Right. So in January of 2012, last year, so January 23rd, 2012, I woke up one morning and there was this strong feeling that I had to go out and do something different. So I called my mother in India, I called some of my mentors here in the States and Canada, and I asked them, I said, there's this feeling that I want to just kind of fall off the beaten path and go do my own thing. I want to go and talk to people. I want to go learn from experiences, share my experiences, and raise a state of well-being that comes from happiness, that comes from a state of contentment, joy, and fulfillment rather than achievement. That was sort of a mantra that kept coming up in my mind. A life of fulfillment rather than a life of achievement is what I am seeking. So I got off the path and I've been traveling around the world since last year. And here I am in Arizona for the very first time. And Olivia and friends have done a great job in hooking me up with people who are interested. So that's how I'm here today. So the topic I'm here to talk about is thought management and happiness. So I'm going to start off this conversation with a question. How many people in this room believe that things that happen to them are a result of coincidence, chance, somebody else, is plotting your life? Versus, second option, how many people here believe that everything that's happening to them is somehow created by me? First option, how many people believe that things that are happening are chance, coincidences, and somebody else plotting it out? One person. 1.5, and see, half a hand, is it half a hand? Okay, 2.5, okay. Second option, how many people believe that I am ultimately responsible for everything? Woo, overwhelming majority. Again, the half hand is up, okay. Good, okay. Right, so I'm going to share with you a story. I think it was November of 2003. I was in India, in this place called Mount Abu, in the western hills of India, and I was having dinner. A friend walked up to me. He sat down next to me and says, Jay, I got to tell you this amazing story. This guy is his name is Ricardo Nunes. He's from a little island in south of Portugal called Madeira. He says, I want to tell you the story about the meditation center's experiment. I said, okay, tell me about it. So he showed me this picture, and he says, this was an experiment that we did because the meditation center where we were practicing was too small in the capital city of Lisbon. And the economy in that country, as you know, that part of the world, Portugal, Spain, Greece, you all heard and seen the news, they're not doing too well. So they didn't have a bunch of money to just go buy a bigger place. So they said, we're going to try something different. We're all going to sit and meditate and visualize that place that we would ideally want to be our next venue. So imagine this. Imagine that these 6-9 people here are part of this project. The first person sits for an hour, meditates, visualizes what is that she wants in this next place to look like. She finishes an hour, she picks a block of this toy house, and she puts it anywhere. Next, she does an hour, picks a block, puts it anywhere she wants, randomly. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So think about this, went on for a year. And then when the house was complete, this is what it looked like. Okay, maybe it was not a year, maybe it was 6 months. People brought trinkets along the way. They bought a flag. You see there's a little pond in front of the house. There's a little swan in front of the house, right? I want you to notice three things here. The red roof, the chimney off to the left, the flagpost, and the pond in front of it. Okay? A year and a half later, the government of Portugal, who had been holding some of the royalties' property, didn't know what to do with it. They wanted to find an ideal suitor, if you will, to donate it to. And they gave this huge mansion to this Brahmakumaris. And I want you to notice something. This is an old mansion. This is something that was the jewel keeper of the king's mansion. It's called, those of you who speak Spanish or Portuguese, Guardo de Joias. Okay, so the jewel keeper's mansion, it had been locked and boarded for years. And when they found out that these people, needed for a place to go and collect, gather and meditate, they offered it. I want you to notice how the red roof, the chimney off to the left, the pond in front, and of course the swan is a artificial swan. Nevertheless, the guy, my friend Ricardo, sends me a picture later on and says, look, we even put up a flag. So I call this presentation, Thoughts Become Things. Okay? So this is what I have in terms of an agenda for you today. Understand how the mind works, understand how the quality of our thoughts affect the quality of our life, and the quality of our thoughts affect the quality of the world around us. How to become a master of your mind, and then this topic about happiness, right? Very, very popular subject. Everybody lives and does things, strives for happiness ultimately, and then an ultimate thought management practice. Everybody cool with the agenda? Any things that I should be talking about that I haven't mentioned here? All right. So the first thing I want to say is scientists have been measuring brain activity in the last 20 years or so. You know about the EEG machine, okay? Electroencephalograph machine. So they basically, put electrodes and they wire up a human being, and as the person is thinking, there's firing of neutrons, electrons, and so on, and they are measuring the activity of the brain. And they say, on an average, think rice farmer in China. Think on the other extreme of the scale, a stockbroker in New York. Huge difference in amount of thought activity. They say if you study their thought activity, it amounts to about 12,000 to 50,000 thoughts per day. And the interesting thing, you all know of Deepak Chopra? He says 95% of your thoughts day to day are exactly identical. It's pretty sad, folks. We human beings are becoming more like robots. Or do you not realize the difference between a human consciousness and how the animal brain works? There's a subtle difference. We have the ability to be intuitive. We have the ability to empathize. That we see something and imagine how we would be if we were in that place. We have the ability to forecast things. Right? So if today we are doing like this, we are spending so much of money, we can predict where things might be. So these are things that human beings are gifted with, and what Deepak Chopra is saying is 95% of the time we are not using these faculties which make us unique. And then scientists are saying that if you strip that down, 12 to 15,000 thoughts per day, right? Think rice farmer in China, he's having about 5 thoughts per minute if you break it down to the per minute level. Stockbroker, 25 thoughts per minute on an average. You know what's interesting? These scientists are saying you could be sitting on a beach in Hawaii. Beautiful, the best dream place you can imagine. And if your mind is worrying at anything close to 25 thoughts or greater per minute, you are experiencing pain, misery, and suffering. Sitting in Hawaii. Okay? The contrast, the opposite of that is, you could be sitting in the middle of a fish market. Everybody's been to a fish market sometime in their life? Okay, we got some pretty wicked fish markets in India. Okay? And if you are sitting in the middle of that, where there's a lot of chaos, is what I'm trying to say, and you're having somehow less than five thoughts or less per minute, you're experiencing peace, contentment, and bliss. Isn't that amazing how you control completely the experience regardless of the environment? Okay? Now here is an experiment that, how many people here in this room have watched the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? Okay, so about 5, 6 people. Okay, so for those of you who haven't, these are quantum physicists around the world, some of the top people who are trying to understand this concept of consciousness, human consciousness. So who is the observer? Where does thought come from? Right? And so these guys do a number of tests, a number of studies, and they go within the human brain and deeper, and they come up with this concept of there is an observer. If you all remember, that's how the movie stops, that they go as far as there is an observer, that they can't actually further break it down and understand what it is. But there's something interesting that they throw up in that movie, is this particular experiment. It's an experiment that was done in Washington, D.C. Why Washington, D.C.? Because it is one of the most crime-ridden places in our continent. So what this guy, Dr. John Hagelin, did is he pulled together about 800 meditators sitting in a room, perhaps bigger than this, but like this, and he connected with the police department and tried to study the difference in the crime rate as these 800 meditators sat for 8 weeks in meditation in a area within Washington, D.C. I want you to notice something. The first 4 weeks, so on the x-axis is the number of weeks, on the primary y-axis is the number of people who sat down collectively to have that higher consciousness, and on the secondary y-axis is the decrease starting from 0 on the top, the drop in crime rate observed over this period. First 4 weeks, hardly any change. At the 4th week, something happens. 2 inflection points. Number 1, the number of people sitting down to meditate jumps up from about 800 to about 2,600 or something like that. Second thing, see the crime rate starting to plummet. From almost no change, almost 0 change from the first 4 weeks, it reduces by 24% in an 8-week period. Folks, this experiment has been repeated many times in many cities up since this time. So you can see how our consciousness is just not about how we feel. We are affecting how people around us feel and behave. So this is what it looks like when you're hooked up to one of those machines. And what you're seeing here is the different patterns of brain activity in a course of a typical day. Start at the top. This is your conscious, awake state, where you're running around, making phone calls, doing your work, speak to people, friends, chatting, so on and so forth, right? It's called beta waves. You can see a lot of chatter in the brain, different levels of intensity. You can see the spikes are, different rates, very packed together, so very frequent thoughts. A person is typically in that state when he's awake and up and about. When you start slowing down, this is the time when you all know that time when you're just about to fall asleep. That's sort of the twilight state of being, if I can call it that. This is the state where you're half awake, half asleep, and you feel very relaxed. That is what they call the alpha state. And notice what the activity looks like. Greater space, more predictable, getting slightly more predictable wave pattern, brain activity pattern. Then the next state is when you start to sleep. The first state, anybody knows what the first state of sleep is called? Anybody? That's right, REM, R-E-M, sleep. Rapid eye movement sleep. This is a dreamful state. If you notice your little grandchild or your child or your pet even, or your brother or sister are sleeping, have you seen their eyes the eyelids are shut, but the eyes are flickering, they're going back and forth inside? Seen that? Everybody seen that? Yeah. So that is the state. So the person is dreaming. Okay? I had this friend, I was doing some workshops in Alaska. I was staying with my friend in Anchorage, And I watch this dog, I would be sitting and doing my presentation, the dog would fall asleep next to me. It'll sleep and then starts doing something like that. All four legs is kicking. So I can see that his dream is running somewhere. So we've all seen that. So that is called the dreamful state. So that's a state again. Brain activity, space between thoughts, very harmonious sort of thought activity. Okay? But still, the depth of the reach of each thought. So if you look at each spike, it doesn't go too far. It starts and dies off very quickly. The last is the dreamless state. Non-REM sleep. Folks, I want you to note, this is the time in each of your night's sleep, this period, the non-REM sleep, when you're creating these delta waves, is when you're really getting the maximum rejuvenation. You understand? Maximum rest. The body is really sort of rejuvenating, building. The brain is actually resting and it is getting ready for the next day. Now, so take this, break this down. So let's summarize it. The beta state, normal thought activity. The brain is getting drained. The human being is going to start feeling tired after some time, even if you're sitting in front of a computer. No physical activity, but you might remember those days when you didn't really do anything physically exerting, but you're just getting tired because of thinking. So that's your beta state. Alpha state, remember that twilight zone I was talking about? Reduced blood pressure. No medication at all. If you can consciously take yourself down to this state while awake, reduced blood pressure. Next state, the gamma state, reduced anxiety. Dreamful state, you remember that REM sleep, the third eye opens. And finally, the fifth, the delta state, is when, like I said, you're getting the maximum rejuvenation when you are in a deep state of sleep. And that, unfortunately, lasts for a very short time in your regular state of sleeping, unless you know how to induce that before you fall asleep. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Any questions about what we've touched upon so far? Okay, if you don't have a question, I have a question for you. On that fourth bullet there, I have something called the third eye opens. Nobody questioned it. That means all of you get it. If you all get it, then why don't you tell me, what does it mean, the third eye opens?
Daydreaming?
Daydreaming. Okay, what else? It's your?
I said with conscience.
It's your conscience. Okay, it's your conscience. Okay. What else? Can you give me something really kind of crisp, like people just get it? Yes?
Like a vision you see when you're telling a story.
Like a vision you see when you're telling stories. I like that answer. What's your name?
Tina.
Tina.
Yeah.
Tina, where were you born and raised?
Tuba City, Arizona.
Tuba City, Arizona. You want to come up and be my guest for an experiment I'm going to do here so the rest of them get what she's talking about? So Tina's going to sit right here. I'm going to stand here and we'll do a little experiment, okay? So I'm going to get out of the way of the camera because we want to capture this. So Tina, do you remember that house where you were born and raised or spent most of your childhood?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know Google Maps?
Yeah.
Okay, so now you know how Google Maps has got this feature these days called street views, where you can actually zoom in and you can actually turn the camera around and you can see what the building looks like?
Yeah.
Right? Can you do a street view demonstration for us? If I were to come and visit Tina in her childhood home, what would the street look like? Right? So describe the street and then stop in front of the house and tell us something about the house.
Where I grew up, my grandmother, she's healthy and she raised me. So we lived like around all of her relatives, like her sisters and stuff. And coming to her house, you would like come down like a windy road, and then like all of a sudden it stops and it comes to a dirt road. And her house was a brick house, and she has vines on there. And like nobody else around, they don't have like plants or anything like that. It's like, you can look it up. grandmother was actually raised in that house, and she lived with her dad. And since then, she had her family there, her kids, and she eventually raised me.
Great. Okay, I have one more question for you. Imagine I arrive at your brick house, I walk into the front door, I knock on it, let's say grandma comes and opens the door for me. If I walk in there, Tina, can you tell me anything that I will see there, anything significant in the room as I enter?
You probably see like a lot of pictures of like my grandma, her kids, and like all her grandchildren, great grandchildren, and like Kobe stuff, like stuff like that, pottery, stuff like that.
Okay. And if I were to turn right, what would I see towards the right as soon as I enter that front room?
A couch, a shelf. It's just kind of like cluttered.
Okay, good enough, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask you something now. Did you all notice when I was asking her these, basically 2 or 3 questions, she looked right at me and she said, first question she answered, she says, my grandmother's Hopi, I come from Tuba City, Arizona. I live in a place where, I grew up in a place where, you get off the road, you go to the dirt road, it's a puebla. She looked right at me and she said, we've got vines on the house. Then I said, it's just, brick house. Then I asked her to go inside and describe something to me. She was looking right at me till I asked her that question about, what do you see on the right-hand side? And she started rolling her eyes and looking at the ceiling. Did everybody notice that? So I have a question for you, Dina. So when you were looking up, and there's a projector and some lights up there, you're obviously not looking at that. Will you see what you're describing to us?
Yes.
So you were kind of visualizing it. So the question I have for you all of is, if the 2 eyes are looking at the lights and the projector, with what eye is she seeing that which she's so vividly describing to me, the detail?
Third eye.
Third eye? Do all of us use that? Do all of us use that all the time? And your daydream is also actually kind of the right answer. Thank you, Dina. That's what we wanted. So I want you to realize something. So we have the ability to visualize. All of us have the ability to take ourselves from some place here. We're sitting here in Glendale, Phoenix, and we were able to transport Tina hundreds of miles away from a time, 2013, to maybe 20 years ago when she was growing up with her grandmother. We all have the ability to take ourselves in space and time wherever we want. And what is interesting is we can do that quite easily with our 2 eyes open. You see? So I want you to take away one lesson from this. In meditation, it is a myth to believe that we need to shut our eyes when we decide to take ourselves to that higher state of consciousness, when we're connecting with ourselves. Okay? Right. That brings us to meditation exercise. How about that? Right, so folks, now I want you to travel with me in this journey going within. Okay, so sit comfortably back straight. If it's comfortable for you, put your feet flat on the ground and your arms rested, however you like it. Just be very relaxed. And I want you to follow these thoughts as we take this journey of going within. I want you to start by taking some deep, comfortable breaths. And when you breathe in, I want you to breathe in down to your stomach, not just your chest. Just like when you see a baby sleeping very peacefully, you will notice that it's the stomach that rises and falls, not the chest. I want you to observe this breath as you're breathing in through your nostrils and the air goes down the windpipe, fills the lungs to the very bottom of the lungs. And then as you're exhaling, notice the warm air that comes out, up the windpipe, down through the nasal passage and out. Just follow this exchange of energy for a few moments. Now I want you to gently turn your attention inwards. Let's go underneath the skin, the flesh, and the bones. And let us feel the energy that flows through the core channel of this body. This is the energy that keeps the body alive. And it is an energy that flows from the top of the head down through the body to the very tips of the toes. Right now, I want you to feel the tips of your toes. Wiggle them if you need to. Feel the tips of your toes. If you can feel the tips of your toes, that means there is energy there. Now let's trace that energy back through the foot to the heels. And I want you to feel your heel resting through the shoe on the floor. Now let's trace this energy up through the ankles, past the calves to the knees. Feel your knees. Now let's trace that energy up through the thighs to the back, where your back is rested on this chair. Feel that point of contact. Now let's go up the spine, to the bottom of the spine. Let's trace the energy going up past the stomach, the chest, to the bottom of the neck. Now let's start at the tip of our fingers. Feel the tips of your fingers. Touch them if you need to. Let's follow that energy as it goes through the knuckles, to the palms, to the wrist, through the upper arms, to the elbows, up past the biceps, to the shoulders. Now let's take this energy inwards towards the neck on both sides. Let's go up the neck from the back of the head, go to the top of the head, and the front of the head. And let us settle in this place right in between the eyebrows. And just feel the energy center located here. It's just below the brain, just behind these eyes, somewhere between the ears. It seems to be the center of all consciousness in this body. It is the center of all thought activity. It is also the center of all memories. It is from here, right in the center of the body, that I, the living being, the point of consciousness, operate this body. I sit behind these eyes and look out at the world and the vast drama that unfolds called life. speak through this mouth. I smell through the nose, taste with the tongue. The entire skin gives me feedback of sensation. I process it right here, sitting behind these eyes. My form is a point of consciousness. My language is silence. My religion, my true religion, is peace. As I sit here and operate this body, sometimes I get lost in the drama that's happening outside. I forget that I am a soul. I get lost in the roles that I'm playing. And I get lost in the roles, that's when the stresses, the anxieties, the fears, the doubts, and the worries kick in. At such a time, all I have to do is just step inwards, become very still, sit behind these eyes and observe. Just observe, no judgment, no getting drawn into any thoughts or its expansion. Just sit behind these eyes and observe. And in that state, I feel very relaxed. I begin to feel the tension melt away. In that state of being, I have access to vast wisdom that is latent within me, in my subconscious mind. When I come back into the world from this state, I can apply myself to the best of my ability, make decisions which are the best for me, for my family, the world around me. And from this state of being connected, ask yourself this question. What exactly do I want in life? What exactly do I want in life? Thank you. Can I get some feedback on this 5 or 7 minutes we went into this contemplation? Yes. Great sense of peace and tranquility. Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
Point about, not sleep, but like that state before you go to sleep, where everything's kind of like numb.
So she felt that she's so relaxed that she went into that state we call the alpha state. Very good. Thank you. What else? It's just the first 2 rows. What about back there? They did not carry.
They were
There was. Do you feel different than when you walked in here? Let's put it that way. How so? How's it different? Lighter? Okay. More relaxed.
Peace.
Okay. Peace. Yeah. Okay. Great. So moving on. There is a very famous scripture in the East. You might have heard of this name called the Bhagavad Gita. It is the holy scripture of 1/7 of this world's population, which is the Hindus. And in that I found a statement which I thought was so pertinent, regardless of what your religious belief is. It says, in the silence of a quiet mind, like a candle in a windless place, the self will reveal the self to the self. I repeat. In the silence of a quiet mind, like a candle in a windless place, the self will reveal the self to the self. Look at the amazing mystery that is waiting to be unlocked for each one of us. What I want, what I need, what I am, what my purpose in life is, what are my passions, all of that is not something that your neighbor, Steve Jobs, your mother, nobody can find that for you. The only way to find your purpose and your passion is when you spend time with yourself and listen to yourself. Unfortunately, there's not a school, there's not a college, there's not any corporate program, at least the way I was raised, that talks about how to find yourself going within. You see the irony? So unless you figure out a method for yourself, find your own technique, tools, and skills, if you will, is that realization of why I'm here and what am I really meant to do in this life not become obvious to you. And it's very interesting, when you, all it is taking time to sit with yourself, and that's a skill again. It is so rare in these days of the iPods and the iPads and the YouTubes and the Twitters and the Facebooks, which are taking us more, taking that space that we have for ourselves into doing things, finding out what's happening out there, and having no idea what's happening 1 inch within our face, our being. So I urge you to think about this. So becoming a master of the thought. So now I'm into the solution part of this workshop. So one of the first things that you need to understand is, in order to go and spend time and understand and enjoy being with yourself, you need to know that whatever is outside is not me. This shirt is my shirt. This is, let's say, my table. That is my car. But I feel, I know, I like, I don't like, I realize. You see how there's a separation even in our language between these things that are mine and I? The interesting aspect about that is these things that are mine come and go. We can never, even if we bought them, they don't ever become truly me. They will come and go at some point. And the way to experience a state of contentment, joy, and peace, as I said in the earlier slide, is when you realize that you don't really control anything outside here. The only thing you can control is who you are within, how you feel. So learn to let go of everything. That's one of the first steps of meditation. Learning to let go. Let go. What is the ultimate letting go, friends? Some of you were in my class the other day, so you don't have to say the answer. Let's give the rest of the class a chance. Oh, you weren't there? Okay. Yeah, so what is the ultimate letting go? Any clue? the biggest fear that is omnipresent in the 7 billion people on earth. That's right. Letting go of this costume. My body, right? Like my car, my body is also a costume. Right? So meditation is a process where we learn to go within and dissociate. You just for a few minutes how you are dissociating from the body and the bodily conditions. The next step of becoming a master of your thoughts is realizing, where we started this conversation, that I am ultimately responsible for everything that I am experiencing. Okay? Here are some quick tips without going into detailed discussion. Some of the greatest leakages in your thoughts. So you can have the greatest meditation practice, greatest thought management practice, or the greatest holiday where you felt really, really good. You come back, these are some of the biggest drains to that sense of being peaceful. Wanting respect and getting angry. Think about it. Okay? Huh?
I think living in the past.
Living in the past as well, okay? Yeah. And then there is this slogan that I have been practicing for myself. Where your attention goes, energy flows. Wherever energy flows, that which you're focusing on, that grows. So my point of this is, think about things that you want in your life. Don't keep worrying and complaining and criticizing things that you don't like in or around you. Am I making it clear? Okay. So focus on what you want. So that which you want will manifest, versus keeping re-energizing that which you don't want. This is a beautiful slogan, a quote. I say unknown. I found out later that it is actually John Lennon. Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking Beatles. Okay. John Lennon. He said that. Somebody asked me in my grade school, a teacher asked me in my grade school what I want to be when I grow up. And I responded, I want to be happy. And the teacher said, what did she say? You didn't understand the assignment. And I said, you didn't understand life. Think about this. How many of us are reared or raised in a culture to be only as much valuable as the things that you do, achievement based, versus one of the primary fundamental concept of being alive is to be happy. We're all here to experience happiness, share happiness. And we've forgotten that. Sorrow has become such an integral part of our life, so much so that we believe that it's natural to be sad. And once in a while, when our football team wins, when I go on a holiday, when somebody buys me a gift, that's when I have this momentary, sense of happiness. That's what I call the boiling frog syndrome. All of you heard of the boiling frog syndrome? No? Okay. I'll give you a quick example of what it is. So this is, you see, the reptiles, any reptile, frog being one example, is a polychilothermal animal. So that is, it is an animal that adapts to the body temperature, to the environmental temperature. So for example, take a pot of water, and you put a frog in there, light a fire under the pot. As the temperature of the water rises, the frog will keep adapting to the temperature. It will not decide to jump out and escape. If you put me in that pot, I'll sense immediately that something's wrong and I'll try to find an exit strategy. But the frog doesn't do that. So they tend to adjust their body temperature to a point where it's too late, the water is boiling, and the frog gets cooked. Right? Think about that, folks. Think about how that's applicable for us. We've heard news. We've heard the 9/11 happened, suicide bombers happened, killings happen at schools, this and that. It has always been there. The news has always been there. And we hear this news and we become accustomed to it and start believing that it is normal. Why? Because it has always, so far, it has been there. slowly that there gradually comes here, right? Everything. Like any pandemic, any disease, any virus. What I'm talking about here is an example of that. And then when it comes here, it's too late. And these are things that unless you find time to go within yourself every day and check and see how are my thoughts, my decisions, my activity contributing towards the betterment or this pandemic that is seeming to take over, the sadness, sorrow, suffering, hatred, intolerance, jealousy, greed. How that is becoming a common concept in life everywhere. I'll give you a little example. You can be honest with yourselves. How many people in this room had a perfectly working iPhone 3? And when iPhone 4 was announced, or iPhone 5 was announced, tossed the iPhone 3 and went and bought that $300 or whatever you guys spent for that latest version of iPhone. You don't have to raise your hands. Think about it for yourselves. I know plenty of people. This country alone, just USA, recycles 500,000 phones every day. When I say recycle, it's basically going into the trash. 500,000 phones just in this country get thrown. Just think about what burden. I mean, this is one example. I mean, I'm not even getting into the other aspects of pollution. So this is where I'm saying this collective consciousness has been completely tainted with what is believed to be the norm. And unless you stop and ask yourself, do I really need it? Is this really making me happy? How many people actually felt that they became better people after buying an iPad or iPhone? Really, better people, better human beings? Anybody here in this room? But if you look at the advertisements of Apple computers, for that matter, any, I'm not, I use an Apple computer, so don't get me wrong, I'm just giving an example of how this marketing and media make you believe that you are completely insufficient, incomplete, and a misfit in society unless you have their coolest gadget. And how can you restrain, how can you see what is right for you? 100 friends of mine, when they went and bought an iPad, I began to believe that I probably need it. I'll be honest with you. It takes a lot of sitting down with myself and saying, really? Do you really need it for what? Enough gadgets to lug around anyway. So this is some examples, like I'm saying. So do not follow the sheep or the herd, as they say. It requires you to spend time with yourself and ask yourself this question: what is important to me? What do I really want? What is my uniqueness? What is my contribution? What is my purpose? Okay. So, talking about happiness, I want to quickly summarize it with two things. Happiness is ultimately a combination of contentment and joy in your life. It is not what we acquire, it's not the amount of money we make, it's not about how much stuff we've collected, right? Or who we know. It ultimately comes down to how content I feel consistently. Okay? So I have some things to say about contentment. Contentment is possible when we reawaken the awareness that everything near and far in this world is exactly the way it is meant to be. I'll tell you a very interesting quote that I read the other day. It's actually an article I read the other day. Some, person, some philosopher had written an article in the newspaper. I just happened to pick it up somewhere and looked at the back page of this newspaper, and they had this article, and it says, why we actually seek to satisfy our desire to buy things, get things, be gifted things, and so on and so forth. It's very interesting. The philosophy behind that, he says, when we have a desire to attain something, let's say we get it, we buy it, we are given it, or whatever it is, right? We fulfill that desire, and that space in between that desire, before when the next desire sprouts, that is the state when we feel our deepest sense of contentment. Did I make it clear? Right? It is that state after having completed a desireless state, when I'm feeling in a state of being content with who I am, very happy with exactly what I have, and before the next desire then comes in and starts sucking away our state of contentment. That is what we, when we're happiest, and we oftentimes tend to confuse that with actually having achieved that thing. Okay? So, there is only one moment, not living for some time in the future or worrying about what has happened in the past. There is only one time, and that is now. That's why it's called the present. It's a present. You're able to accept everyone as they are at every moment in every situation. I tell you, I struggle with this too. It takes a lot of sitting down and talking to myself, accepting people exactly how they are, and not seeing the things that are false within them, but seeing the goodness in whatever is happening with the people and the situation around them. That is a secret to contentment. And then we create actions aligned with what is true within ourselves, that we can make the most effective contribution to the world. So, not complain and worry about what other things other people are doing or other people are saying, but how can I create a life and actions that are aligned with my highest purpose. You see, I can only do this when I stop looking outside and I'm looking at myself and saying, when I see a situation, when I see a problem, when I see something that doesn't feel right, how can I contribute to making it right rather than complaining and kicking and screaming? And the next aspect is joy. Joy is only possible in this world when our life flows into the world free of the desire for any part of it to return to me. Think about it. Think about those moments in your life. Within this statement, the first statement here is one of the secrets to human existence, happiness. When life, the meaning of life, why do we live here? It's because we want to share what we have. We want to be able to exchange and express our energies, fundamental energies such as love, such as happiness, right? Without any desire to receive in return. That's when you experience your deepest joy. Our deepest joy is when we're able to, when we are being creative and when our creativity is aligned with the truth of who we are and what we are. Creativity that's aligned with our purpose. How do you find all this stuff? What is our purpose? Again, it goes back to the previous slide. Then, unless you spend time sitting and understanding what is it that really makes me happy, what is it that I really want to do, and then build a life that is based on these fundamental aspects about I call it the DNA of my consciousness. Right? This is who I am. This is what I really want, and therefore all my decisions, all my activity, all my career path will be aligned with these ingredients. And that's when I can experience joy. And creating the most appropriate response to meet the needs of people in the world around you. So I used the word create in the second bullet. Create what? Creating success, as defined by some of the wise people, is it's not about how good you are in your math or how good you are in your biochemistry or whatever it is. Ultimately, success is about how appropriately can I respond to that person in front of me for that need at that time. That is success. When I know to be a good human being. What is the point if I'm a NASA scientist and I don't have the basic skills how to interact with my daughter or my neighbor? Is that success? Right? So think about it. When I can respond to the need of the person in front of me at that time, in that situation. And when you are in your zone, when you find that path, when you're in that moment of creativity, time is irrelevant. Have all of you experienced that thing that, at some point in life when you're living your passion, when you're doing your thing, it doesn't matter. I haven't eaten in 6 hours, it doesn't matter. Rain or shine, cold or hot, I just love, I'm just so immersed in what I'm doing, I feel so full. Folks, that moments of those situations, those things are pointing you to what your true purpose and your destiny is, what you're meant to be doing. Summary. So, get clear on exactly what you want. Spend time with yourselves. Ask yourself, sit with yourself, hone that. It's not going to come the first day, it's not coming the 10th day. It's going to take time when you can start refining that which you really want. Focus on that. Like I said, where your attention goes, energy flows. Don't complain and worry about things that you don't like. Don't affirm things that you don't want in your life. Meditate on it on a daily basis. That life that you want, those qualities that you want, those people that you want to attract in your life, everything that you is your vision of the perfect life. Sit and spend time with yourself and draw your attention, give energy to it. Let the source know, let the universe know, start believing it and start living it as if it is already happening. Kickstart the process, folks. Make it happen so that the universe can respond and conspire, can align with you to live that which you really want, that life that you really want. And sit back at that point, pick up your legs and watch the rest unfold. Any questions? Okay, how are we doing on time?
Got about 10,
10-15 minutes, good, okay. So some closing tips for you. I have something else to start with, meditation afterwards, but some closing tips for you. If you already have a meditation practice, great, do it. How many people in this room, really, how many people in this room have a meditation practice, a regular meditation practice? Good, so, about 4 of you. The rest of you, find ways. I don't live here, but we have friends here who teach meditation right here in Phoenix, and I think I have some flyers for them. You can call them and find that. It's a free meditation workshop. Find stuff online, which I think is my next word. Yeah. Find stuff online. Find ways you can sit in the convenience of your home or in your school or wherever it is that you have time. And there's a website I've given here that you have 3-minute and 5-minute meditation commentaries that you can use to, go within and create that sense of peace and that sense of contentment and fulfillment. Make time. None of this stuff is going to be useful at all if you don't let go of things that are not necessarily taking up time in your day. Or let go of things that are not necessary that are taking up time in your day. And make time to spend time with yourself. You can be a saint that has just descended from the Himalaya mountains. And if you hang out with people every day, all day, for 365 days of the year, who talk about what next thing that they're going to buy, or the next football game that they, what score of the football game yesterday, or what the neighbor bought, or what chatter like that, you can be a saint and you will be dragged down to that level. A concept of basic science says everything reaches a state of equilibrium. You all heard that? Same thing with consciousness. If you're going to hang out with people who talk rubbish, can I say that word? Negativity, ordinary stuff, mundane stuff, you're going to be dragged down to that level. So find people who think about higher things, think about something that is useful to the world, think about how to elevate your consciousness, think about higher objectives and ideals for life. Right? Find some people to hang out with there that are doing a lot of good. Okay, so I have another 5-minute meditation practice, and then I have a question. I got a few questions at the end of this practice. An experience, what it's like just to be detached, not getting drawn away into any story that the mind throws up, or not being judgmental about any thoughts that arise at the screen of my mind. just here in the now. Just observe my true form is a point of consciousness. My true language is silence. My true religion is peace. I sit here behind these eyes and operate this body. This body is like a costume, just like an actor wears a costume to play a part in a movie or a drama. So also this is my costume, this body. And I'm playing a part in this vast drama called life. Sometimes I forget that I am the soul and not the road. And when I get caught up in the road, caught up in the costume, or things of the costume, I begin to feel stress, begin to worry, there's tension. And all I have to do is just step within, behind these eyes. This stage called planet Earth is nothing but a big theater where this drama is unfolding. My real home, or the backstage, is a realm far beyond this hustle and bustle of this noisy universe. It's a realm of light, a realm of a golden red light. And I was there suspended like a star in that golden red sky. Vast golden red sky. With me are the other stars, my fellow actors, waiting for their turn to come down to play their part on the stage using a costume. With all of us, just about all of us, is one pure star, one brilliant star that constantly emanates love, constantly emanates peace. And I tune into that brilliant star that is inspiring me, that is urging me to be that loving being that I am, the peaceful being that I naturally am. This green star is constantly emanating waves of peace and love. I bask in this light for a few moments. The light of this pure love, pure peace. And from this vantage point, send this peace and love to this planet Earth, that all of my fellow actors are playing their part, having forgotten who they are, running around, tired, angry, without hope, without any courage. Let me reflect the rays of the source of love, the source of peace and love. Just like a mirror, I reflect the rays of this light down to the planet Earth. The gentle blue bulb rotates ever so slowly. I share the light with my fellow travelers, giving them a sense of hope, a sense of peace, clarity, so they can think clearly for themselves, do what is right for them and for the world. So I envision sharing this light from the source of love and completely surrounding planet Earth with the energy and light of peace and love. Of that state of being, ask yourself this question: where is the felt sense of being? Where do you feel the sense of being within you? What happens to time in the state of being? Does the being need anything right now? Does the being need any knowing to become complete? Does the being need any doing to do any better? Then ask yourself this final question: what is true happiness for me? Thank you. Any feedback? Any thoughts about how this last 5-7 minutes was? Yeah.
Wonderful sense of wholeness.
Wonderful sense of oneness. Great. What else? Feel energized. One last one before we call it. It's very peaceful. Yeah. Great, so friends, so thank you so much for your time. I've thrown my email address up here, so if you want to ask me questions, connect with me on Facebook, whatever. I send out a weekly blog, or, an email with profound thoughts if you want to join. So this is a great place to hit me up with an email, and I'll add you to my mailing list. Any other last question before we wrap this up? Sorry? Chodagam. Yeah, Jay Chodagam. Thank you very much. Yes, you had a...
One of those aspects I enjoy that the one who talks about accepting others as they are. Yet in so many of our lives, there have been other people that have done things or involved in things that have been so detrimental to us, so painful. And I know that forgiveness is one of the tools that's used to try and transcend that. I was just wondering if you had any additional comments about that.
I'll answer this question. Did you all get the question? So the question back there, yeah? Did you get the question? Okay, so I don't have to repeat it. The question really was, in essence, is you say that, we find acceptance in everybody and everything that is there around you, but then the question was, but there are people who have very obviously done things that are so detrimental to me and to the society. And he says he knows things about forgiveness, but then how do you really reconcile with such situations? I'll give you an example, a story from all of you heard of Mahatma Gandhi. A mother took a little boy to Mahatma Gandhi and said, Gandhiji, you're a great person, so if you tell the little kid, he will listen to you. This little fellow's got a problem with eating too much sugar all the time. So Gandhiji stops for a moment and he says, can you come back after a week? And the mother says, sure. She doesn't understand why, but she says, sure. And she goes away and comes back after a week. And now Gandhiji looks at the little boy and says, little boy, it's not good to eat sugar. You should stop. And the kid and the mom go away. And the mom comes back amazed. And she comes back and says, Gandhiji, what did you do? You told him once, I told him all my life, but he's listening to you. And then she says, why did you ask me to come back after a week? So Gandhi says, I had an addiction to sugar. I used to eat sugar after every meal. So when you asked me to preach to your son, I first had to fix myself. So I lived without eating sugar for a week. So when I spoke, something struck the target. Think about that. So if I see anger, if I see rage, if I see jealousy, whatever I see out there in the world, I've got to ask myself, how much of that do I have within myself? And really, to answer your question, the only change that I can bring about is within here. Because remember, we are sitting in a collective consciousness. We are all connected with a web. Not the internet, but a different web, a conscious web. That is creating a sense of whatever we see out there. That is a reflection of really our collective consciousness. So it is not them. Somewhere, somehow, I am part of it. And the only thing I can do is make that change with it. That's why the slogan of the Brahma Kumaris, our organization, is, when I change, the world changes. Anything else? Thank you very much.